The Arizona sun bounced off the flagstone path as Jasmine Donovan crossed the plaza at Aurelius Skyport Academy. Behind her, a sun-bleached sedan turned out of the lot and disappeared without fanfare. Ahead of her, private jets were lined up like crown jewels behind velvet stanchions, Falcons, Learjets, and Gulfstreams. The largest sat under its own canvas shade, nose angled perfectly toward the school crest. Inside the entry dome, cool air hummed over polished floors and brass-framed welcome screens. Students in custom monogrammed jackets moved in tight clusters, many filming their arrival for curated social feeds. Jasmine drew stares immediately. She wore a sun-faded field jacket, pale jeans, and boots cracked with dust at the heel. Her only bag was a soft leather tote with worn seams. In her hand, she carried a folded application printed in black and white. She stepped up to the front counter. The receptionist looked up, scanned her quickly, and offered a tight smile. "Support services check-in is around back," the woman said without reading the paper. Jasmine didn't respond. She placed the application gently on the counter and stepped back, her gaze steady. The receptionist blinked, as if realizing too late that she hadn't followed the script. "You're here to apply?" she asked, her voice lifting just enough to turn heads nearby. A boy in a white polo leaned toward his friend. "She looks like she printed that at a gas station." His friend laughed and tilted his phone to record. "Ground crew cosplay," he muttered as he typed the caption. The receptionist tapped her screen and frowned. "We don't process paper applications here. All submissions go through the secure digital portal. By invitation." Her hand drifted toward the badge rack, then hesitated. "Badges are reserved for verified cadets." Jasmine didn't react. She stepped aside without speaking, her eyes moving to the massive digital wall looping highlight reels from past years. Simulator wins, jet takeoffs, champagne celebrations. One panel showed a Gulfstream G700 banking over the desert, labeled with a shimmering caption, "Elite Training Series, $75 million master asset." A cluster of influencer cadets lounged near the side corridor. One wearing a fleece branded with the school's logo raised his phone as she passed. "Live from the wrong building," he said, catching her in frame. "This one thinks she's on the schedule." Jasmine said nothing. She stood still beside the wall, her posture unchanged, when another group walked by laughing. "What's next?" one girl said. "She's here to valet the jets." A security guard approached, glancing at her boots. "Ma'am, are you here with ground maintenance or catering?" he asked. She handed him the same folded paper. He skimmed it, then looked toward the counter. The receptionist offered no help. "She doesn't have a digital badge," she said, returning to her screen. The security guard gave a small shrug and walked away. Jasmine stayed exactly where she was. One by one, new students arrived. Most wore luxury sneakers, gold-trimmed lanyards, and smartwatches linked to their admissions profiles. Wristbands flashed green at the scanner gate. A tall girl in white flight gear whispered, "Did she come from the bus stop?" Jasmine remained silent, her fingers staying on the strap of her tote. She didn't glance at the security camera trained on her from across the room. The Gulfstream video played behind her again, its price tag hovering near the wingtip like a challenge. The badge station stayed untouched. Her name tag sat in a plastic tray, unclaimed. Her boots left faint prints on the polished floor. She didn't wipe them away. She didn't speak, and she didn't move. The day would end. The cadets would leave. The reception desk would close. But Jasmine Donovan would still be there. No badge, no welcome, no place in their world. Yet, Jasmine was still there the next morning. No badge, no schedule, no welcome, but her name remained in the system under a placeholder file marked Pending Review, which meant no one had removed her, and no one had dared to approve her either. She stood in the back of the simulation wing, a long glass-walled gallery lined with touchscreen maps, audiovisual displays, and looping drone footage of past student flights. Trainees clustered around the main screen, watching a breakdown of runway communication protocols. The room pulsed with the scent of filtered air and charged ambition. Above their heads, a banner read, "Safety is the flight plan." No one spoke to Jasmine, but no one stopped watching her. Quinn Rowe entered in a flight suit embroidered with her family crest, silver wings overlaid with a red crown. Her blonde hair was slicked back, her expression sharp. Her circle followed in coordinated gear, all wearing custom flight jackets and mic earpieces. They saw Jasmine and didn't hesitate. Did she get lost again, or are we running a charity wing now? Quinn asked, her voice deliberately loud. One of her friends, a lean boy with perfect hair, lifted his phone and began filming. Jasmine didn't blink. She stood off to the side, a half step outside the wall of floor tape that separated registered cadets from observers. A live stream started seconds later. On screen, Jasmine appeared beside a caption in bold that read, "How to crash a G700 in under 10 seconds." The feed picked up laughs behind the camera and the faint hiss of Quinn opening her electrolyte bottle. Quinn stepped closer and tipped the contents forward without warning. The drink splashed over Jasmine's boots, staining the cracked leather darker. "There," Quinn said. "Now the runway mud's off." Someone snorted behind her. Another voice followed. "Check the logs. Pretty sure janitorial applications go through facilities, not flight operations." A wave of chuckles rippled through the room. Jasmine bent slowly, inspected her boots, then straightened. Her fingers brushed the front of her jacket once. Danton Vale, one of the Academy's senior instructors, approached the front of the room and tapped the display. His voice cut through the laughter with well-trained projection. "Let's begin with weather conditions," he said, swiping to a wind shear chart. "Assume microburst activity at final approach." He looked across the cadets, then paused on Jasmine. "No offense, folks," he added, smirking, "but if your gear looks like hers, you won't be getting a landing slot in my rotation." The students burst into new laughter. Even a few assistants near the AV panel turned away to hide smiles. Jasmine didn't move. She focused on the screen as though watching the barometric data. Halfway through the session, a rolled paper printout flew across the room. It struck Jasmine in the cheek and unfurled across her chest. Laughter followed, sharp and immediate. "Simulator schedule," someone called. "She'll need it when she's cleaning the pods." Jasmine caught the edge of the paper before it slid to the floor. She folded it in half, then again, pressed the corners flat, and tucked it into the side of her tote. Her gaze never lifted. She said nothing. One of the interns near the rear console leaned into his mic. "This is good content," he whispered, not realizing the feed was still hot. "It's going viral." The next segment began with an overview of cockpit roles. While the instructor demonstrated seat adjustments on a projected console, a student dropped a plastic coffee lid behind Jasmine's boots. The snap of it hitting the tile drew attention. A girl in braided pigtails stage whispered, "Oops, hope she knows how to mop that up." The cameras caught it all. So did Jasmine. The schedule printout she'd folded had her name at the top, written in pen. Someone had scrawled, "Not cleared," across it in red marker. The ink had blurred slightly. She refolded it and pressed it between the pages of a manual that wasn't hers. The shadow of the simulator pod stretched behind her like a promise. By mid-afternoon, Jasmine's name appeared on the internal simulator schedule. A short slot, no instructor listed, no briefing attached, just E. Donovan, Bay 2, 1430. No one told her she'd been assigned. No one walked her through the interface or offered a headset. A student named Levy, tasked with running SLM rotations, found her near the observation bay and nodded awkwardly. "You've got a test run. Bay 2's open now. Just climb in and follow prompts." He didn't look her in the eye. The simulator pod sat at the far end of the hangar, a gleaming capsule designed to mimic the cockpit of a Gulfstream G700. The outside bore the Aurelius insignia in polished silver. Inside, it housed a full wraparound visual dome, tactile controls, adjustable pressure, and a custom sound field to match actual flight audio. It was one of the most advanced training tools in the country when set to standard conditions. As Jasmine approached, she passed a row of cadets standing near the tech desk. One of them held Quinn's gold embossed clipboard grinning. Another whispered, "Is this her first flight or her last?" A few others were already setting up the live feed for the Academy's internal channel, captioned, "Solo Evaluation. Bonus Entry." The comments had already started. One read, "Maybe she'll surprise us and hit the ceiling instead." Danton Vale leaned against the wall by the pod door. He held a coffee cup and wore the same detached expression he used during student reviews. "You've got 15 minutes, he said. "Standard sequence, treated like a final round. Full manual." He smiled without warmth. "Show us what you've got." Quinn stood nearby, twirling her stylus. "Try not to hit a cactus, sweetheart," she said just loud enough to cut through the hangar hum. "The system hates those." Jasmine didn't look at her. She climbed the steps, stepped inside the pod, and lowered herself into the pilot seat. The door closed with a hydraulic hiss. The lights dimmed. In the control booth, two interns quickly muted the in-cabin audio feed and activated their preloaded settings file. Wind conditions were doubled. Autopilot delays were set to 2 seconds. Radar chimes were stacked with low battery warnings. Irrelevant in simulation, but visually disruptive. They added a terrain alert to simulate a false mountain face, an override only instructors were supposed to access. The dome lit up with a panoramic view of the desert. Jasmine adjusted her headset, reached for the checklist, and began the pre-flight sequence. Her movements were quiet, precise. She toggled fuel, initiated startup, and calibrated horizon data by feel. She didn't know the systems were lagged. Not yet. At first, the SIN responded smoothly. The taxi felt normal, the liftoff tight but manageable. Her left hand hovered steadily over the throttle while her right worked navigation prompts. As she reached cruising altitude, the first hiccup arrived. A brief flicker in the right display, then a delay in trim adjustment. She corrected manually. A low whistle of warning sounded in her headset. Radar sweep failed to load. Outside in the observation room, students watched the dome playback in real time. One of them leaned closer and smirked. "She's compensating like crazy. Look at her oversteer." Another nodded. "She's not panicking though. Not yet." Jasmine tightened her grip slightly and tapped in a route correction, but the turbulence module had been set to high. Unrealistic for the altitude. The simulator bucked, swayed, then overcorrected. Jasmine adjusted pitch, cut power by 2%, rebalanced trim. Her face remained expressionless. Then the false mountain appeared to her left. A warning chime screamed, "Terrain." She scanned the horizon. Nothing was there, but the screen pulsed red. No override worked. In the booth, the interns watched silently as the terrain response failed to disengage. The pod shook. The dome flashed white. A loud final klaxon roared through the speakers. The screen went black. The word failure appeared in red center screen, blinking like a curse. In the observation gallery, the room exploded. Laughter ricocheted off the walls. Someone clapped, slow and sarcastic. A trainee near the console posted the clip instantly. The caption read, "Tarmac rats sim fail." Danton walked to the booth, retrieved a printed evaluation sheet, and without looking at it, ripped it in half. The sound of paper tearing cut through the last wave of laughter. He tossed it into a wire bin and turned to face the group. "She's done here," he said. "Thank you for your time." Quinn gave a mock salute. One for the archives. Inside the pod, Jasmine remained seated for 3 full seconds after the lights returned to normal. Then she removed the headset, powered down the panel, and opened the door. She stepped out into the silence that followed the noise, the movements calm, her face unreadable. She walked down the steps. No one reached for her. No one blocked her way. Her boots hit the polished hangar floor with soft, deliberate sound. She passed Danton without a word. He said nothing. The clipboard still hung from Quinn's arm. She was already laughing again. Jasmine didn't glance at the feed still playing overhead. She didn't ask for her evaluation, and she didn't look back. The simulator failure hit the leaderboard within minutes. Jasmine's name appeared dead last in red. Fail. Surash. Unsafe to fly. No score, no notes, just a blinking warning beside it, as if she were a hazard to be cleared from the runway. A notification pinged through the internal network, and by the time she stepped out of the hangar, the cadet lounge already had the clip playing on repeat. She walked the marble-lined corridor alone. On either side, glass cases displayed photos of top graduates, all smiling beside jet cockpits, holding plaques, toasting champagne under runway lights. Polished model aircraft spun slowly on mechanical stands. In every frame, someone stood with pride. Her boots left faint echoes on the smooth floor. Each step was recorded. Behind her, a student muttered, "At least she's leaving in style." Another added, "More like escorted out by gravity." The first TikTok clip crossed 200,000 views by the time she reached the main lobby. The title was pinned to the top, "When Your Flight Dreams Die on Day One." A compilation had already started. A simulator crash, her frozen score, a zoom in of her face exiting the pod. The final clip cut to someone sweeping a hangar floor with the words, "Back to your shift." Near the media booth, an instructor sipped a canned espresso and leaned toward a colleague. "That's what happens when you lie to fly," he said. "It was always going to end like this." The other nodded, not even looking up from his phone. She kept walking. Quinn and her group flanked the exit doors, each holding iced lats, each with a phone raised, their selfie sticks extended like weapons. Quinn whispered just loud enough for the microphones to catch, "Careful, don't trip over your resume." A voice from the side shouted, "Hope you enjoyed the cockpit, janitor." Laughter followed, high and thin. Someone launched a crumpled flyer across the floor. It hit Jasmine's tote with a soft thump and bounced to her feet. She didn't look down. Someone zoomed in on the moment and snapped a photo. Boots, paper, stained canvas bag. It went up online seconds later, captioned, "Stairwell pilot leaves the building." The comments rolled in like wind. One read, "Should have brought a mop instead of a resume." Another said, "Did she think this was a museum tour?" At the base of the stairs, a freelance aviation journalist raised his phone. "Miss Donovan, any comment? Anything you'd like to say about the test? About your background?" Jasmine didn't pause. She didn't change direction. The phone lowered slowly as she passed, the silence dragging behind her like vapor. A few steps from the academy gate, a torn page of a flight manual fluttered against the stone, its edge marked with scuffed boot prints, half a sentence smeared from someone's spilled drink. Jasmine bent, picked it up with 2 fingers, and carried it to the nearest bin. She dropped it in without expression. The press feed caught that too. It was uploaded with the title, "Trash on the Way Out." The academy gate loomed ahead, tall and silent. On one side of it, the words Aurelius Skyport Academy, Private Flight, Public Future gleamed in brass. The gate itself was open. No one stopped her. No one called her back. She stepped through it, her shadow stretching long across the pavement behind her. The sound of camera shutters and echoing laughter faded into nothing. No one followed. No one asked where she was going. Her tote hung low on her shoulder, the bottom corner damp from the earlier spill. The straps creaked faintly as she moved. The same bag that had been photographed, mocked, filmed, and tagged now swung in silence at her side. Across the street, someone waiting for a car leaned against a tree and watched her pass. He didn't recognize her. No one did. Not yet. The sky above Aurelius shimmered with desert heat and the gleam of cameras. On the ground, rows of luxury jets gleamed like parked jewels, each aligned along velvet ropes and gold-edged placards. The annual investor fly-in was underway, and the main tarmac buzzed with press, donors, cadets, and influencers ready to capture perfect angles of elite performance. A string quartet played near the hangar steps. Champagne was being poured. No one looked up until a tower intern pointed at the radar screen. Unfiled incoming. The air traffic supervisor leaned in, his voice tightening. "What do you mean, unfiled?" A Gulfstream G700 had just crossed into controlled airspace. No transponder ID, no call sign. Its position marker was smooth and fast, flying lower than the demo ceiling. A second blip confirmed its descent angle. It was dropping. Guests turned as the sound arrived. Not the roar of an engine, but a tight, controlled vibration pitched low and close. The jet cut across the sky like a shard of polished metal. It glided above the administration tower, then banked hard left in a wide, deliberate curve. A few cadets gasped. "That's a G700, someone said, but it's not one of ours." The jet adjusted altitude with surgical precision. It aligned with runway 1, dipped its nose slightly, and descended without a wobble. There was no flare, no drift, just a clean, exact touch, like the tires were meeting silk. Dust curled behind it as the jet slowed. The sun caught the body as it coasted to a stop, its flaps folding down like wings at rest. A moment of silence followed. Then the crowd started murmuring. "Who the hell is that? No clearance. That thing just landed itself." The aircraft door hissed. A platform lowered. There was no flag, no crew, just one figure stepping into the light. Jasmine Donovan. She wore a crisp civilian flight suit. No rank, no patches, only a Gulfstream certification badge on her left shoulder. Her boots met the tarmac without pause. Her eyes scanned forward. She carried nothing. A nearby press assistant froze mid-photo. "That's her," he whispered. "That's the woman who crashed the sim yesterday." "No," someone else said. "That's the woman who just landed a $75 million jet on runway 1. The crowd didn't move. Cadets near the velvet lines lowered their phones slowly. Donors whispered into champagne glasses. Someone dropped a clipboard in the tower. The supervisor fumbled his mic. "Get confirmation. Who let that flight through?" The intern stammered. "No one, sir. She didn't file." Jasmine walked forward, steps even, stride unchanged. She passed rows of parked jets without glancing at them, her shadow trailing behind, long and symmetrical across the strip. Quinrose stood frozen near the drinks tent, a half-lifted flute trembling in her hand. Her father's voice rang through a phone clutched to her other ear. "Do not engage her," he snapped. "Just stay put." A few influencers raised their phones to record, but no one dared narrate. Jasmine kept walking. She reached the center of the viewing strip, then stopped beside the brass emblem set into the tarmac. The same one trainees touched after their first solo flight. She didn't bow. She didn't wave. She stood as still as the jet behind her, its engines silent, its purpose complete. The quartet had stopped playing. No one had told them to. Then a black car pulled up near the private gate. The Academy's chairman stepped out, followed by a Gulfstream executive in a navy suit and mirrored sunglasses. Both men walked briskly toward Jasmine, their eyes locked on her. The executive lifted a hand in greeting, then paused, waiting for her to acknowledge them. She did not. The moment stretched, long and brittle. Cameras clicked slowly now, spaced out like question marks. The audience had stopped reacting. They were listening, waiting not for an explanation, but for permission to understand what they had just seen. Jasmine turned slightly toward the Gulfstream and nodded once. It was not theatrical. It was not rehearsed. It was simply the gesture of someone acknowledging a job done exactly right. The air did not cheer. The runway did not echo with applause. But the silence was not emptiness anymore. It was full, heavy, reverent. Jasmine had spoken, and she hadn't said a single word. The runway hadn't cleared. People still stood in clumps, dazed by what they'd just seen. Even those who hadn't witnessed the landing in person now gripped their phones, watching the playback on loop, tilting their heads as if seeing it from another angle might make it less impossible. A Gulfstream G700 flown without clearance, landed in complete silence, by a woman who the day before was mocked off campus. The ground didn't tremble, but something in the room of them had cracked. Jasmine didn't move. The heat shimmered gently above the tarmac behind her. Her flight suit bore no stripes or ribbons, just a small Gulfstream patch and the initials FAA sewn beneath her left collar. She stood in the very center of the event, on the same ground where she'd been erased. A helicopter's rotor buzzed from behind the far hangars. It lowered toward the auxiliary pad, stirring the gold-lined banners and rattling the iced drink tables. The crowd turned as the Aurelius Academy helicopter touched down. The door opened, and out stepped Colonel Matteo Vellon, retired Air Force CEO of the Academy. He didn't wave to the press or greet the investors. He walked straight toward Jasmine. Reporters surged, their mics extended. The Academy's media staff scrambled to control the footage. A Gulfstream representative in a Navy suit flanked Vellon, holding a black folder and a clipboard embossed with a silver seal. Vellon stopped in front of Jasmine. For a moment, he simply looked at her. Then, in full view of the cameras and his board, he raised his right hand and saluted. "This academy," he said loudly, "was founded to serve skill, not status. We forgot that," Miss Donovan reminded us. Silence spread like fog. The reporters stilled. The cadets near the velvet line didn't shift their weight. The Gulfstream executive opened the folder. "We are authorized to confirm," he read aloud, "that Jasmine Donovan is the lead FAA examiner for Gulfstream's International Certification Division. Her high-altitude test flights redefined safety standards for next-generation business aviation. The G700 protocol used today was developed from her field data." A few phones fell. One investor dropped his champagne glass. Quinn, standing 10 yards away, blinked hard, as if trying to reset what she was hearing. Her phone slipped from her hand, the screen cracking when it hit the ground. "She's not just a pilot," the Gulfstream rep continued. "She's the reason half our current fleet is considered airworthy." One of the Academy's senior investors stepped forward. "She didn't just save our jets," he said. "She saved our program. Last fall, when this institution was facing collapse, she invested silently through a trust. 42% of Aurelius belongs to her." The crowd murmured, but no one moved. A few cadets stared at the floor. Others slowly lowered their devices. The hashtag feed that had once read #Tarmacrat now rolled through new titles. #Runway Queen. #Silent Ace. #King Landing. The original clip of her simulator crash had been replaced by a loop of her real touchdown, with slow-motion captions and a zoom on her hands over the yoke. Danton Vale stood at the edge of the main group, near the shuttle stairs. He took one cautious step back. A press aide caught the movement and glanced toward the board chairman. The instruction didn't need to be spoken. Jasmine walked. She moved slowly along the flight line, the crowd parting for her without needing to be told. Her boots echoed softly. She passed the edge of the stage where the projection screens were being updated. The simulator pod that once housed her final test now showed her real landing on loop, its file name reading Donovan_G700_full_landing. Danton turned as if to slip around the corner, but a board official stepped into his path. Jasmine reached the spot where the trash bin had stood the day before. A crumpled plastic bottle still sat on the edge, just where Quinn had tipped it out over her boots. Without pause, Jasmine picked it up, held it for half a second, and turned toward the press. She spoke, "Trash belongs in the bin." The cameras flashed in a synchronized burst. Not one person laughed. Quinn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her father stood still beside the Gulfstream rep, saying nothing. His hand slowly slid a memo from his folder and handed it to the chairwoman. The statement was brief. Termination of Downton Vale, effective immediately. Gasps followed, but Jasmine didn't look back. She had already turned toward the aircraft. A breeze picked up along the tarmac, brushing the edge of her flight suit. The Gulfstream behind her remained still. It didn't need to move. It had already made its statement. No one had tried to speak over her silence. Not now. They knew who she was, and more than that, they knew what she had done. The hangar was quiet. The echo of her boots no longer drew whispers or laughter. This time, when Jasmine Donovan walked the floor, no one turned to look. Not out of contempt, not out of awe, but because they didn't know how to meet her eyes. Her name had already been added to the new flight schedule, printed at the top of the simulator roster in clean block letters. System Lead, E. Donovan. The same sheet that had once been thrown at her was now neatly posted, framed in glass, and pinned beside the simulator door. Nothing was said about it, but no one dared write over it. She passed rows of cadets who straightened without thinking. Some nodded slightly. Others lowered their phones. No one filmed her. No one joked. In the main lobby, a new plaque had been installed beside the model aircraft display. Beneath the school crest, etched into brushed steel, it read, "Not all pilots wear rank. Some just land." The same hallway where her silence had once been mocked now echoed with a different kind of stillness, a respectful one. Near the entrance, her old canvas tote sat inside a display case, cleaned and repaired, its frayed strap now stitched and restored. It rested beside the folded application she had once handed across the desk. A small plaque identified it simply. Donovan Application Kit, Day 1. The Lovestream camera, once used to humiliate her, now ran a continuous reel of her G700 landing, projected high above the reception area. New visitors watched it on loop before they even reached the registration desk. She made no speech. There was no ribbon cutting, no fanfare, but the changes began immediately. A press release announced the launch of the Jasmine Donovan Flight Initiative. For the first time in Academy history, applicants from low-income and non-legacy backgrounds could earn admission on merit alone. The school's media team issued a single headline: "Skill over status. Effective now." Jasmine didn't attend the announcement. She was walking the outer path near the academy gate. The same brass plate still read, "Aurelius Skyport Academy. Private flight, public future," but now a new placard stood beside it. Director of Skyport Operations, Jasmine Donovan. It was smaller, quieter. It didn't need to stand out. It was never meant to. A breeze tugged a paper brochure across the stone. She caught it with her foot, leaned down, and picked it up. On the cover was a photo of her beside the G700, sunlight catching her flight suit, and the badge on her shoulder. The caption read, "Precision, poise, power." A press intern nearby hesitated, phone half lowered. "Anything you'd like to say for the record, Director Donovan?" She looked at him for a moment, then with a small smile said, "I wasn't here to fit in. I was here to clean the airspace." The intern didn't reply. He simply nodded and stepped back. That evening, in one of the new cadet classrooms, a group of first-year students watched a projected training reel. The screen displayed her full landing footage, frame by frame, with annotations layered across each maneuver. No one spoke as the wheels kissed the tarmac in silence. A few students leaned forward. One took notes. Another adjusted their grip on the simulator yoke beside them. The room was dim, steady, and still. The lesson didn't need explanation. It had already been flown. In the administration wing, Quinn's father stood in the chairman's office, his resignation letter already signed. Across the campus, maintenance staff replaced the velvet ropes with simple steel barriers, functional, not decorative. The admission portal had been redesigned overnight, the legacy recommendation field removed entirely. Outside the simulator bay, a line of cadets waited for the next rotation. Among them stood a girl in worn boots and a faded jacket, her application printed on standard paper. No one stared. No one commented. The student running check-in simply handed her a headset and said, "Bay 3 is ready when you are." The Gulfstream G700 sat on display at the edge of the tarmac, immaculate in the setting sun. Beside it, a small sign didn't list its price or its luxury features. It simply read, "Performance speaks for itself." And so it did. Jasmine Donovan was never meant to fit the mold, and she never tried to. Mocked, dismissed, and pushed aside, she met every insult with silence, every humiliation with stillness. But in that silence lived something stronger than applause: mastery, resolve, and a quiet belief in her own worth. She didn't argue to be seen. She flew to be undeniable. And in doing so, she reshaped the very place that tried to erase her. 6 months later, on a clear Arizona morning, Jasmine stood at the edge of runway 1, clipboard in hand. Before her, a line of simulator-certified students waited for their first real flight assessment. They wore standard-issue flight suits, no family crests, no custom patches, just their names and certification levels. Among them stood Levy, the student who once directed her to the rigged simulator. His eyes met hers briefly, then dropped to his checklist. He had been the first to apologize after that day, the first to ask if he could learn from her directly. Now he was training to become a safety instructor. "First group, approach checks," Jasmine called. Her voice carried without strain. She didn't need to shout to be heard anymore. The academy grounds had transformed. The marble and brass remained, but the emphasis had shifted. Display cases now featured breakthrough designs and safety innovations alongside pilot achievements. The once mandatory luxury sneakers and designer flight gear had given way to standardized equipment evaluated purely on function. The Donovan Initiative had already accepted its second class, 50 students chosen solely on aptitude tests and simulator performance. Their backgrounds ranged from rural townships to urban centers, farm communities to military families. What united them wasn't wealth or connections, but natural skill and dedicated practice. In the main administration building, Matteo Vellum met with the board, reviewing the quarterly reports. Applications had doubled. Training standards had tightened. And most surprisingly to the old guard, their international reputation had soared. The elite still sent their children to Aurelius, but now they did so knowing they would be evaluated on the same merits as every other student. The Donovan method, they called it. Skill speaks. Performance proves. Excellence needs no explanation. On the observation deck, a group of industry representatives watched the flight line. Among them stood Quinn Rowe, her posture different now, less rigid, more attentive. After her father's resignation, she had withdrawn from the academy, only to return 3 months later without her entourage, without her custom gear, requesting readmission as a standard applicant. Jasmine had reviewed her application personally. The new Quinn had written only one sentence under statement of purpose: "I want to learn to fly like you did." She was back in the program now, starting from the basics, filming nothing, posting nowhere, her focus entirely on the aircraft. Near the hangar entrance, a display monitor showed the day's schedule. At the top, in simple font, ran a quote that had become the Academy's unofficial motto: "The sky doesn't care what you wear, it cares how you fly." The simulator wing had been expanded. 3 new pods had been installed, each calibrated to the same exacting standards, each available to any student who qualified through performance metrics. The old practice of reserving premium equipment for legacy students had been quietly discontinued. In Jasmine's office, a simple space with windows facing the runway, sat a small frame containing a piece of the torn evaluation from that first day. She had retrieved it from the trash herself, not as a reminder of humiliation, but as a testament to perseverance. Beside it stood a model of the Gulfstream G700, precise in every detail. It wasn't there as a symbol of luxury or status. It represented something far more valuable, the standard to which she held herself and now her students. As the sun climbed higher, Jasmine checked her watch and signaled to the tower. The day's flights were beginning. One by one, students would take the controls, face the sky, and prove themselves not by their names or their clothes or their social feeds, but by the steadiness of their hands and the clarity of their decisions. This was her legacy, not the name on the building or the plaque by her door, but the students who understood that excellence needs no announcement. It simply performs, in the quiet of the cockpit, in the precision of a perfect landing, in the focus of a challenging takeoff. That's where real statements are made. And Jasmine Donovan had made hers without saying a word. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Everyday Life Stories community. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.